Hello, all. This is my presentation on my cultural pride through the arts. For this presentation, I have chosen to feature the city of Tenochtitlan. Now, I understand that it's not exactly a traditional art style, but I want to highlight a few things. First off, let's go off of culture and its base nature. Culture, by definition of the Webster Dictionary, is a customary belief, social forms, and material traits of racial, religious, or social group. Basically, what that means is that culture is what happens when people exist together. Chincanos are labeled to be as the cosmic race because we've got a little bit of everything. But this includes all of the races we come from, if that is to be true. Cultures, by their nature, are always fluid, they're always changing because people are never the same from day to day. It's easy to see them as static, but you can just look at America and see a vast difference from the theological Christians to the vast melting pot we know today. Now, cities themselves are great museums. Archaeology is the study of material remains such as tools, pottery, jewelry, stones, and monuments of past human life activities. Now, this also is the remains of culture and people. Now, that was defined by the Webster Merriam Dictionary. Cities are the museums of those we can no longer talk to. You can look at Rome and see all of its ruins, and we pull a lot of speculation about what the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic was like from those ruins that we have. Art is also a reflection of the world around us, and by nature, we build stuff that reflects well of our culture. Tenochtitlan was a very productive city. It was founded on an uninhabited island with pile-based foundations. It was connected mostly through water channels similar to Venice. It was very well zoned, and it was zoned into four different sections, four called Campan, and those themselves were zoned out to 15 Capuli. There was a lot of infrastructure like schools, temples, and marketplaces in these Capulis. The city also had great communication to the rest of the Aztec Empire. It allowed for great communication between the Triple Alliance. They had 5 great causeways leading out of Tenochtitlan, each wide enough to fit 10 horses, or at least according to the Spanish. And almost all of them had drawbridges in order to control the flow of people and resources in and out of the city. Now, Tenochtitlan was so beautiful. It was so colorful. I know we like to think of it as a drab place built of stone, but that is not true. That's far from the case. The Aztecs had to have put a lot of color and life into their city. They had great temples to the gods. They had sacred temples. The biggest temple in their city was a sacred temple to Tlaloc and Huitzilopochtli. They had flourishing markets. The market of Tlatecoco was the largest had the largest market on the continent and could hold up to 60,000 people at any given time. It was essentially the ancient city supermarket. At the peak, Tenochtitlan had over 200,000 souls. This would have made it one of the biggest cities at the times. A good, well put together city can lead to a massive empire. Again, Tenochtitlan was built in an uninhabited island. It actually had a sister city, Tlatelolco, just to its north that it eventually absorbed, and it became part of the Triple Alliance and eventually became the capital and essential to controlling the resources. Now, resources are power, and it is speculated through history that the first kings were those who were in charge of the food. The organization of resources and people allow for empires to thrive. For example, the Aztecs had the Chimpana system for farming. This allowed for a lot of surplus in an otherwise harsh place to have agriculture. They had massive aqueducts that had 2 channels, that way one channel would always be running at all times, so that way there was a constant flow of fresh water. They also had the dike Nezahualcóyotl, which was a 17-kilometer dike that separated fresh water from the brackish water. It also allowed them to control the water level and thus control the flow of, again, goods and resources. The reason why I chose this is because I absolutely love buildings. I find that buildings, out of all of us, are the one things that get cataloged of our achievements. You can look back at the pyramids, you can look back at the Hanging Gardens, or all these other different places like the Great Wall. I mean, they stand through time and they are proof of human ingenuity, and oftentimes they take a lot of creativity to come up with such marvelous effects of engineering. I mean, a city is just a mess of buildings. It's just a whole bunch of them, and they capture all the life that lived in it. Those buildings were real. Those buildings housed people. Those buildings were used for one thing or another. And I just cannot get over how fantastic and how well done the Aztecs did their cities to make it one of the best cities in the planet, let alone the world, let alone the continent. It's estimated that at one point, Mesoamerica housed more people than Europe combined because they were healthier and better city management. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.